Okay, so you want to own a McDonald's franchise. Golden arches out front, drive-through wrapped around the building, breakfast rush at 7 a.m., lunch rush at noon, dinner crowd rolling through until close. Billions of burgers served, brand recognition in every corner of the planet. A business model tested across 120 countries. You collect the revenue, the system runs itself, and you join one of the most successful franchise networks ever created. Sounds like the perfect business. And honestly, from the outside, it really does look that way. But here is what people who actually invest in this business know, and what most people scrolling through franchise opportunity websites never tell you. A McDonald's franchise is not a golden ticket you buy and cash in on. It is a complex, capital-intensive operational business that happens to sell hamburgers. The margins are real. The restrictions are real, in ways that most people never see coming. Let's start at the beginning. When people say they want to own a McDonald's, they are almost always talking about becoming a franchise owner, not building their own burger restaurant. There is a critical difference. You do not own the McDonald's brand. You do not own the recipes. In most cases, you do not even own the land or the building. You are licensing the right to operate a McDonald's restaurant under a detailed, legally binding franchise agreement that controls nearly every aspect of how you run the business. McDonald's Corporation currently operates approximately 41,800 locations worldwide. About 95% of those, roughly 39,700 restaurants, are franchised. Only around 5%, about 2,100 locations, are owned and operated directly by McDonald's Corporation itself. The entire business model is built on this structure. McDonald's makes most of its money not by selling hamburgers, but by collecting rent and royalties from franchisees. That relationship is the foundation of everything that follows. Here is the part that surprises people when they first look at becoming a McDonald's franchisee. You cannot just walk in with money and buy a franchise. McDonald's has one of the most selective franchise approval processes in the entire industry. The company receives somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 franchise inquiries every single year in the United States. Out of those thousands of applications, McDonald's approves fewer than 100 new franchisees annually. That is an acceptance rate somewhere between 1% and 2%, lower than getting into Harvard. McDonald's does not want investors. It wants operators. The company explicitly requires that franchisees commit to being hands-on, full-time owner-operators. You cannot buy a McDonald's, hire a manager, and walk away. You are expected to work in the business, typically 40 to 60 hours per week, managing day-to-day operations personally. If you are looking for passive income, McDonald's will reject your application before you finish filling it out. The financial requirements are steep and very specific. McDonald's requires that prospective franchisees have a minimum of $500,000 in non-borrowed personal resources. That means liquid assets, cash, stocks, bonds, real estate equity that you can prove you own outright, not money you plan to borrow. That $500,000 is just the qualification threshold. It does not even cover the full cost of opening a location. The total initial investment to open a traditional McDonald's restaurant ranges from approximately $1.3 million to $2.3 million depending on the format, location, and whether it is a new build or an existing restaurant acquisition. Here is how that breaks down. The franchise fee itself is $45,000. That is non-refundable and due upfront just for the right to operate under the McDonald's system. Then comes equipment and pre-opening costs, which run between $615,000 and $1.3 million. That includes kitchen equipment, point-of-sale systems, seating, signage, decor packages, and initial inventory. Then you have signs and seating and decor, another $350,000 to $700,000. But here is the part that catches people off guard. In most cases, you do not buy the real estate. McDonald's operates primarily on a ground lease model. The corporation, or in some cases a separate McDonald's real estate entity, owns the land and the building. You, the franchisee, lease the property from McDonald's. This structure is the financial engine that makes McDonald's one of the most profitable companies in the world. The company is not really in the hamburger business. It is in the real estate business that happens to have hamburgers on top of it. A typical McDonald's ground lease requires the franchisee to pay the greater of either a base rent, usually around $150,000 to $400,000 per year depending on location, or a percentage rent calculated as roughly 8.5% to 15% of gross sales. Whichever number is higher is what you pay. On top of that rent, You pay a monthly service fee to McDonald's Corporation of 4% of gross monthly sales. And you pay into the National Advertising Fund another 4% of gross sales plus local cooperative advertising, typically another 3% to 5%. Add it all together, and before you have paid a single employee, bought a single pound of beef, or turned on a single fryer, you are paying McDonald's and its related entities somewhere between 19.5% and 28.5% of every dollar that comes through your registers. Let's be very clear about what that means. If your McDonald's location generates $3 million in annual revenue, a solid performance for a well-located traditional restaurant, you are paying between $585,000 and $855,000 per year in rent, royalties, and advertising fees before you calculate a single operating expense. That is the business model. McDonald's gets paid first, and it gets paid as a percentage of sales, not profit. Whether you have a great year or a terrible year, McDonald's gets its cut. Now let's talk about what you actually do every day when you own a McDonald's. You are running a high-volume quick-service restaurant that operates somewhere between 16 and 24 hours per day, depending on location and format. A typical McDonald's serves between 1,500 and 4,000 customers per day. During peak hours, breakfast from 6 to 9 a.m. and lunch from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., you might serve 400 to 600 customers per hour across counter service, drive-through, and increasingly, mobile order and curbside pickup. Managing that volume requires a staff of between 50 and 80 employees across all shifts. You are scheduling crew members in 4 to 8-hour shifts across early morning, midday, evening, and overnight periods. You are managing turnover, which in the quick-service restaurant industry averages somewhere between 100% and 150% annually. That means you are replacing your entire workforce every 8 to 12 months. You are constantly hiring, training, scheduling, and managing performance in an industry where the labor pool is predominantly young, part-time, and transient. Here is something that most people do not realize until they are inside the business. McDonald's has extraordinarily detailed operational standards. The franchise agreement and the operations manual, a document that runs well over 1,000 pages, specifies exactly how almost everything must be done. The temperature of the oil in the fryers, 347 degrees Fahrenheit. The amount of time a Big Mac can sit in the heated landing zone before it has to be discarded, 10 minutes. The exact sequence of how a quarter pounder is assembled. The cleaning schedule for the bathrooms. The height of the grass in the landscaping. You do not have creative freedom. You cannot change the menu. You cannot source your own ingredients to save money. You cannot redesign the interior to match your personal taste. You are operating a McDonald's exactly the way McDonald's requires you to operate it. The benefit is a proven system that has been optimized over 70 years. The cost is that you are running someone else's business under someone else's rules using someone else's branding, and you are paying a significant percentage of your revenue for that privilege. Let's talk about food and labor costs, the two largest operating expenses in any restaurant. At a typical McDonald's, cost of goods sold, the food, packaging, and beverages, runs at approximately 28% to 32% of gross sales. Labor costs, wages plus payroll taxes and benefits, run at approximately 25% to 30% of gross sales. Combined, food and labor typically consume between 53% and 62% of every revenue dollar. Add in rent and royalties to McDonald's, another 19.5% to 28.5%, and you are already at between 72.5% and 90.5% of revenue before you account for utilities, insurance, maintenance, supplies, credit card processing fees, local property taxes if you do own the real estate, accounting and legal, and a dozen other line items. Utilities alone at a high-volume McDonald's, running fryers, grills, freezers, HVAC, and lighting 18 to 24 hours a day, can run $6,000 to $12,000 per month. That is another 2% to 4% of revenue. When you add every expense category, a well-run McDonald's typically operates at a net profit margin, the actual money the franchisee takes home, of somewhere between 6% and 10% of gross sales. On a location doing $3 million in annual revenue, that translates to a net profit of between $180,000 and $300,000 per year before taxes. On a location doing $2.5 million, you are looking at $150,000 to $250,000. Those are respectable incomes for a working owner-operator, but they come after working 50 to 60 hours per week managing a complex operation with 60 employees and very little margin for error. Let's run the math on payback. You invested between $1.3 million and $2.3 million to open the franchise. If you financed part of that, and most franchisees do, you are carrying debt service payments. Assume you put down the required $500,000 minimum and finance the remaining $1 million at a typical SBA loan rate of around 7.5% over 10 years. Your annual loan payment is roughly $119,000. Subtract that from your $200,000 net profit and you are left with about $81,000 in actual free cash flow in the early years. At that rate, fully recovering your initial $500,000 equity investment takes somewhere between 6 and 8 years, assuming everything goes according to plan. And that assumes your location performs at or above system average, that labor costs do not spike, that you do not face unexpected equipment failures, and that McDonald's does not mandate expensive remodeling requirements, which we will get to. Here is the risk that most prospective franchisees do not see coming. McDonald's has the contractual right to require you to reinvest in your restaurant at regular intervals. Approximately every 7 to 10 years, the corporation mandates a major reimaging or remodeling to keep the restaurant current with the latest design standards, technology upgrades, and customer experience initiatives. These remodels are not optional. They are required under the franchise agreement. A typical reimaging can cost anywhere from $300,000 to $700,000 depending on the scope and the age of the existing location. McDonald's may provide some financial assistance or allow you to finance the remodel, but a significant portion comes out of your cash flow or requires additional borrowing. If you have spent the previous 8 years paying down your original loan and building equity, a mandated $500,000 remodel resets that clock and puts you back into a leveraged position. Let's be very direct about competition and market saturation. McDonald's controls where you can open and, critically, where you cannot. The corporation manages territory very carefully to avoid franchisee-on-franchisee cannibalization, but that does not mean you are protected from competitive pressure. You are competing with Burger King, Wendy's, Chick-fil-A, Taco Bell, Chipotle, Five Guys, Shake Shack, and dozens of regional and local competitors, all fighting for the same quick-service dining dollars. In recent years, Chick-fil-A has become a particular threat. Despite being closed on Sundays, Chick-fil-A locations generate average unit volumes of approximately $8.1 million per year, nearly triple the average McDonald's unit volume of around $3.2 million. Chick-fil-A has successfully positioned itself as a higher quality, more customer-focused brand, and it is taking market share in key demographics, particularly suburban families and younger consumers. McDonald's has responded by investing heavily in technology and customer experience. The corporation has pushed franchisees to adopt mobile ordering, digital menu boards, self-service kiosks, curbside pickup, and third-party delivery integration through Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Grubhub. These technology upgrades improve convenience and throughput, but they also come with costs. Delivery orders, for example, typically carry commission fees of 15% to 30% to the third-party platform. On a $25 delivery order, you are paying $3.75 to $7.50 just in platform fees before any other costs. Here is what actually happens when you operate a McDonald's day-to-day. You arrive early, often before 5 a.m. if your location serves breakfast, to ensure the opening crew is set up properly. You are checking that the grills are preheating correctly, that the morning inventory is stocked, that the overnight cleaning was completed to standard. You are handling customer complaints, a wrong order, a long wait time, an employee who was rude. You are managing scheduling conflicts because 2 employees called in sick and you are short-staffed during the lunch rush. You are monitoring food safety protocols because a single health department violation can shut you down or, worse, create a public relations crisis. You are reviewing daily sales reports, tracking which day parts are underperforming, adjusting labor scheduling to match traffic patterns. You are conducting employee performance reviews, dealing with interpersonal conflicts among crew members, training new hires on the line, and making sure your managers are following McDonald's operational standards exactly. You are not sitting in an office collecting checks. You are working in the business, often physically on the line during rush periods, handling the same tasks as your crew. The franchisees who succeed at McDonald's are the ones who embrace that reality. The ones who thought they were buying passive income typically flame out within the first few years and either sell at a loss or have their franchise agreement terminated by McDonald's for underperformance. Let's talk about what happens when things go wrong. Equipment failures in a quick-service restaurant are not inconveniences. They are emergencies. If your primary grill goes down during the lunch rush, you lose the ability to serve most of your core menu. If your fryer fails, no French fries, and McDonald's sells more pounds of French fries than any other restaurant chain on the planet. If your point-of-sale system crashes, you cannot process credit card transactions, and roughly 80% of quick-service transactions are now cashless. A major equipment failure during peak hours can cost you $2,000 to $5,000 in lost revenue in a single day, and emergency repair calls from commercial kitchen service technicians are expensive, often $200 to $400 per hour plus parts. Smart operators maintain preventive maintenance schedules and keep backup equipment or service contracts in place, but those are additional costs that eat into already thin margins. Here is something that catches first-time franchisees completely off guard. McDonald's does not just evaluate you on sales. The corporation uses a detailed grading system that assesses every franchise location on quality, service, cleanliness, and value, commonly referred to as QSC&V. Corporate inspectors and mystery shoppers visit your location regularly, sometimes announced, often unannounced. They are checking food temperature, order accuracy, speed of service, employee uniforms, bathroom cleanliness, dining room conditions, drive-through wait times, and customer interaction quality. Your QSC&V scores are tracked, ranked, and compared against other franchisees in your region and across the system. If your scores fall below acceptable levels consistently, McDonald's has the right to intervene, require corrective action plans, and in extreme cases, terminate your franchise agreement. You can be profitable and still lose your franchise if you do not meet operational standards. That is the trade-off. You get the most recognized brand in quick-service restaurants, but you operate under constant scrutiny and rigid compliance requirements. Now let's talk about the income side with more granularity. The average McDonald's restaurant in the United States generates approximately $3.2 million in annual revenue. But that number varies wildly based on location, format, and local market conditions. A high-traffic urban location or a highway rest stop McDonald's can do $4 million to $6 million or more. A small town or rural location might do $1.8 million to $2.5 million. Revenue breaks down across several dayparts. Breakfast, roughly 6 a.m. to 10:30 a.m., represents approximately 25% to 30% of daily sales at most locations. Lunch, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., is another 30% to 35%. Dinner, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., accounts for roughly 20% to 25%. Late night and overnight, where applicable, make up the remaining 10% to 20%. Each day part has different customer profiles, different menu mixes, and different labor needs. The most profitable items on the menu are not the burgers. Fountain beverages have a product cost of roughly 10% to 15% of the selling price. A large Coke that sells for $1.79 costs the franchisee about 20 to 30 cents in syrup, CO2, water, and cup. French fries, despite being a high-volume item, have a product cost of around 25% to 30%. Coffee is exceptionally high margin, particularly during breakfast, where McDonald's has successfully competed with Starbucks and Dunkin' on price and convenience. The lowest margin items are typically the premium sandwiches and chicken products, where protein costs and preparation labor are higher. A franchisee makes more profit on selling a customer a Big Mac, large fries, and a large Coke than on selling a premium buttermilk crispy chicken sandwich alone. This is why upselling combo meals and beverages is drilled into crew training. The margins live in the add-ons. Here is the competitive advantage that McDonald's franchisees do have. Brand recognition is unmatched. The golden arches are one of the most recognized symbols on the planet. Customers know exactly what they are getting when they pull into a McDonald's. There is zero confusion about the menu, the quality, or the experience. That familiarity is valuable, particularly for families, travelers, and customers in unfamiliar areas. McDonald's also benefits from massive economies of scale. The corporation negotiates national supply contracts with beef suppliers, bakeries, potato processors, and packaging manufacturers at volumes no independent restaurant could ever achieve. Franchisees benefit from that purchasing power. The food costs you pay are lower than what you would pay trying to source the same ingredients independently. The marketing power is another structural advantage. McDonald's spends over $500 million annually on national advertising in the United States alone. That is brand building you do not have to fund individually beyond your required 4% contribution to the advertising fund. When McDonald's launches a new product or a national promotion, tens of millions of dollars in television, digital, and outdoor advertising drive customers to your location without you spending a single additional dollar. But here is the problem. You are also locked into whatever strategic direction McDonald's corporate decides to take. If the company decides to push heavy discounting and value menu promotions to drive traffic, your average ticket goes down and your margins compress. You do not get a vote. If McDonald's decides to emphasize premium products that require more labor and have lower margins, you absorb that impact. The corporation is optimizing for system-wide growth and brand positioning, not for the profitability of your individual location. Let's talk about what happens if you want to exit. Selling a McDonald's franchise is not like selling a typical small business. The franchise agreement gives McDonald's the right of first refusal on any sale. You cannot just find a buyer and close the deal. McDonald's has to approve the buyer, and the company applies the same rigorous vetting process to the buyer that it applied to you when you were approved. That means the buyer has to have the financial qualifications, pass the background checks, complete the training program, and commit to being a hands-on operator. If McDonald's does not approve your buyer, the sale does not happen. This protects the brand, but it also means your exit options are more limited than they would be with an independent business. The market for existing McDonald's franchises does exist, and well-performing locations do sell at multiples of annual profit, typically somewhere between 3 to 5 times adjusted EBITDA. A location netting $250,000 per year might sell for $750,000 to $1.25 million. But that sale price has to be attractive enough to justify the buyer taking on the franchise obligations, the rent, the royalties, the remodeling requirements, and the operational intensity. Here is a specific risk that accelerated during the COVID-19 pandemic and has not entirely gone away. Labor shortages. The quick-service restaurant industry was hit particularly hard by staffing shortages starting in 2020 and continuing through 2024. Many McDonald's locations were forced to reduce operating hours, close dining rooms, or limit service to drive-through only simply because they could not staff enough employees to operate at full capacity. At the same time, wage pressure intensified. The federal minimum wage remains at $7.25 per hour, but in practice, most McDonald's locations now pay starting wages of $12 to $17 per hour or more, depending on the local labor market. In competitive metro areas, starting pay has risen to $15 to $18 per hour just to attract applicants. That wage inflation has pushed labor costs from a historical 25% of sales to 28% or 30% at many locations, compressing margins significantly. McDonald's corporate has responded by pushing automation. Self-service kiosks reduce the need for counterstaff. Mobile ordering shifts order entry to the customer. Automated beverage dispensers and fry stations are in testing. The goal is to reduce labor dependency, but those technology investments require capital, and somebody has to pay for them. In most cases, that somebody is the franchisee. Let's run the numbers 2 ways: best case and realistic case. In the best scenario, you are approved as a franchisee and awarded a high-traffic location in a strong suburban market with limited direct competition. You invest $1.5 million total, putting down $500,000 and financing $1 million. Your location opens strong and ramps up to $3.5 million in annual sales within the first 18 months. Your food cost runs at 29%, labor at 27%, and your total operating expenses come in at 63% of revenue after rent, royalties, and all other costs. Your operating profit is approximately $1.295 million. After your annual loan payment of around $119,000, you are netting roughly $176,000 in year 2. By year 5, your loan balance is lower, your operational efficiency has improved, and you are clearing $240,000 per year. At that pace, you recover your initial equity in about 5 to 6 years, and from that point forward, the location generates strong cash flow. You are working hard 50 hours a week, but you are building real equity and income. In the realistic scenario, you are awarded a good but not great location doing $2.7 million in annual sales. Your labor costs run slightly higher at 29% because of local wage pressure. A mandated remodel in year 6 costs $450,000, requiring you to refinance. You face 2 years of increased competition when a Chick-fil-A opens 1 mile away and pulls 8% of your sales volume. Your net profit averages $160,000 in the good years and $110,000 in the tougher years. Your loan payoff timeline extends to 10 years, and your total cash-on-cash return after a decade is positive but modest. The difference between those 2 outcomes is not the business model. Both locations are operating under the same franchise agreement, the same menu, the same royalty structure. The difference is location quality, competitive timing, labor market conditions, and the operator's ability to execute consistently under pressure. The global McDonald's system generated approximately $112 billion in total revenue across all locations in 2024. McDonald's Corporation itself reported revenue of approximately $25.5 billion, most of which came from franchise royalties and rent, not from selling hamburgers. The company's net profit margin as a corporation is roughly 31%, far higher than the 6% to 10% margin the franchisees operate at. McDonald's corporate makes more money more reliably, with less risk than the franchisees do. That is the structure. McDonald's is not selling you a business. It is selling you the opportunity to operate a business under its system, using its brand, while paying it a significant percentage of your revenue in perpetuity. The franchisees who succeed are those who understand that arrangement clearly, who have the operational stamina to execute at a high level day after day, and who see the value in trading independence for the power of the McDonald's system. The franchisees who fail, and there have been many, are typically those who underestimated the capital requirements, overestimated the profit margins, believed they could be passive investors, or were not prepared for the relentless operational intensity that running a high-volume quick-service restaurant demands. The golden arches are real. The brand power is real. The system works. But it works for the people who show up every day, manage every detail, follow every standard, and accept that they are not business owners in the traditional sense. They are franchisees operating under license, under rules, under constant evaluation. The machine serves the hamburgers. It does not run the business.